Is podcasting better than videos? Today, I want to talk about this topic of podcasting. I have been doing podcasting for a while now, and I'll be honest, I didn't really continue it for a long time. I started podcasting in 2011. That was a long time back, and there was a huge gap. In fact, for many years, I didn't really do it regularly. And recently, I started this podcast, a fresh podcast to reset things. And I'm quite enjoying it. There are few reasons that I want to give you, and I want to explain why podcasting is better than videos. My name is Ravi Sagar, and let us talk about uh, the podcast benefit. So, first of all, podcasts are easy to create. So, as a creator, all you need to do, you need to simply record yourself. Of course, it depends what kind of podcast you are creating for, what kind of audience you are creating this podcast. But in most cases, if I look at myself, I find it quite easy because all I need to do, I just need to record my audio, and my podcasts are not really very serious. They are not really uh, well prepared. They are more like a conversation, as if I'm talking to a friend, and that is my intention. Even if you look at my videos, they are quite casual in nature, and I try to share whatever I have been learning, my experiences. I talk about in my videos different things that I do on a daily basis. And this podcast is something that I wanted to create again after, of course, a long time. But I wanted to create this podcast as one more medium where I can share my thoughts. So not only it is easy to create a podcast, but also at the same time it is easy to consume. So let us say you are listening to this podcast. All you need to do, you just need to listen to it. You may be traveling, you may be driving, you may be in a train, in a bus, in a flight, and you can do something else. And at the same time, you can listen to the podcast. And I find it really interesting because these days people are busy. These days people don't really want to do spend 15 minutes watching a video unless there is a huge value for them. But listening to a podcast is, in my opinion, quite simple. They can still be doing their other work or their work, whatever they are doing, and they can still listen to it. It is like listening to a music, and they will, of course, learn something while listening to a podcast. And I also think that podcast can be a bit longer when you compare them with videos. When it comes to videos, you need to be to the point, you need to be specific because you can't really expect someone to watch your video for 20 minutes. But I have seen podcasts that can be 1 hour long, and it is more like having a friend who is talking to you while you are going to work or maybe while you're working or driving. And I think this is something really interesting because as a creator, you can just do a normal conversation without worrying too much about the editing, without worrying too much about the cuts or different type of things that you want to do in videos that requires you to make sure you record yourself properly, the audio is good, the video is good, and of course you need to spend a lot of time editing it properly. But when it comes to podcast, I've seen most of the podcasts are quite straightforward. It it need not to be well edited. In fact, for me, I don't really do any editing at all. I just record myself and I upload it. That is it. So I think uh, I can create more podcast without worrying too much about the quality. Of course, whatever you're saying should make sense. Don't really talk stupid things or just don't get carried away. If you're trying to convey a message, if you're trying to share something, just be to the point. But I find it easier to create, and uh, the editing part is definitely a big concern for someone like me. I don't really like doing editing. In fact, if you look at my videos where I talk about things like Atlassian tools, mostly mostly Jira, and I talk about different add-ons. I talk about different use cases. I talk about different things that I learn. I try to keep them very simple. I try to keep them in one take. I don't really do editing. I mean, I can, but I don't do it because I don't really have a lot of time making sure I am almost perfect. I try to keep it very casual. I try to keep it very, very normal, natural, and this is something that I want to do in my podcast as well. I just want to have a normal conversation, just like I'm talking to a friend. And right now, I'm just having my morning cup of tea, and I'm also sharing my thoughts. So I am now planning to do more podcast. In fact, when it comes to sharing my thoughts, I have been blogging for many, many years, more than a decade. I also have a YouTube channel where I share mostly tutorials. I share something new. And I also have started this podcast where I'm planning to share my thoughts in a different way by just recording my audio. And I think 2019 and moving forward will definitely be the right time, in my opinion. I feel that podcasts are not really going away. And if I'll be honest, I think podcast is another way where I can practice myself. I really want to improve the way I speak. I really want to improve the the way I convey my thoughts. And I think if that is one of your objective in life, it is not something that you can get better in just few days or few months. You need to do it on a regular basis. You need to do it for over a period of time, for the rest of your life. You will eventually get really, really good. You will eventually become a world class speaker, and you can only get there if you practice every day. So this podcast is one more way for me personally to improve myself. And of course, at the same time, I don't really want to bore you guys. I also want to make sure that whatever I'm talking about is helpful. I promise I will not be talking about my useless things in life. I want to share my learnings. I want to make sure that I convey something meaningful so that you can also benefit if you are also interested in doing something similar to what I have been doing. For example, my podcast would mainly be uh, on topics like Atlassian tools, on topics like programming, and of course technology. And of course I will, from time to time, sometimes I will probably plug in few things like uh, that may not be relevant to technology at all, but more or less my focus, I'm planning to keep my focus on Atlassian tools. In case you are something who is a student, or maybe you are already working in an industry and you want to make a switch. You are trying to learn, let us say, Jira or Confluence or Bitbucket, or maybe you are a software developer and you want to get the best or the most out of the Atlassian tools. Then I think my podcast, along with my blog, along with my videos, I think these different mediums where I share my thoughts, my focus, and my domain, or I should say my area of expertise, or basically whatever I'm talking about in these different mediums will be around these topics. So personally, I think that creating a podcast, as I mentioned before, is very simple. All you need to do, you need to just record your audio and upload it. And I I basically use Anchor.fm. The reason is that it is simple. It comes with a mobile app. You can also do a recording using their web interface, but I use a mobile app because it is convenient. And the moment I finish my recording, I simply upload it. That is it. And the good thing about Anchor is that it will also be published on Spotify, and Spotify is everywhere. So as of today, I have a podcast on Anchor, of course, where I actually have my recordings, but you can find me on Spotify. You can also find me on iTunes. And I think majority of people who listen to something like music or podcast, they are already on Spotify or they are already on iTunes. There are some other platforms like SoundCloud. There are platforms where you will find people consuming or also at the same time uploading and storing their podcast. And I think I will probably stick to Spotify and iTunes for the time being. But if I encounter or if I think there is a separate platform, I will probably distribute my RSS feed of this podcast to those platforms. But if you're already on Spotify, you can definitely find me if you search Ravi Sagar. Even on iTunes, you can easily find me and you can subscribe to or you can follow my podcast. I don't know if subscribing to the podcast is the right word, but you can definitely follow me if you want. If you think these topics like Atlassian tools and technology in general, software development, project management is also an area of your interest, then definitely my podcast and of course my videos will be helpful. So this is all I wanted to share in this podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. Thank you very much.